Hello, Stephen White, Steve Arts 89 here. Apparently Axanar is in trouble with CBS again. Now, if you know the history of Axanar, um, it's a very complicated story. I'll just make it brief. Basically, around 2015-16, Prelude to Axanar was made. It was a sort of pretend documentary about a period of history in the Federation called the 4 Years' War, and it was made as an ad for crowdfunding to make a feature-length movie about the 4 Years' War. And they brought in actors from Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and actual people who'd worked on Hollywood productions and some of the other Star Trek fan films, and they so impressed people that they managed to get $1 million donated through to Kickstarter and Indiegogo things, and they were going into production. And then CBS turned around and said, "Yeah, no," and they basically served them with a cease notice, whatever they're called, and they had to stop. And then they actually took them to court, and there was some backwards and forwards where people thought they were going to give in and let them make the film. Then other people thought they were going to actually take them to the mat and actually, sue his ass off. They ended up kind of just agreeing, and the worst thing that happened that came out of this was that CBS put together the fan film guidelines, which is basically a fan film ban, which stops people from making fan films. Basically, it limits it to, and by these limitations, it basically means you can't make anything of value, anything worth watching, anything worthwhile. You can only make 15-minute videos, two at the most, and they can't be related. They can't be continuing. They can't continue on into something else. They can't use characters over, so you can't do any sort of serial nature. You can't develop anything. You can just do one-off random little stories, just little, oh, someone walks onto the shuttle and goes down to the planet and meets an alien, says hi, and then says something funny, and that's the end. Like it's about the most you can do. It's like pretty sad, as from before, where we had series like Star Trek Continues and Star Trek New Voyages, and even Renegades, although I hated it, which had 45-minute episodes, 45 to 50-minute episodes that were parts of a series, and they basically covered Star Trek 4. I'm sorry, season 4 of the original Star Trek. They basically did a season 4 between those shows, and although the acting's kind of spotty in some parts, some of it's very good, and they got a lot of the original actors back in and some real actors. So, sort of, it's up and down with the acting, but the production itself, it looks like the original show, it feels like the original show, has the spirit of the original show. I loved it. A lot of people loved it, and it's just a pity with all these diverse Star Trek shows they want this whole I've lost the words. They basically want all these different Star Trek shows to engage different fans and different groups of people. Why not do one retro show? Imagine what they could do spending decent money recreating the original Star Trek, and how popular that would be. Now, you can acknowledge it as a fun retro show fan thing. It doesn't have to be, competing against the latest Emmy dramas or whatever. I don't know why they can't do something like that. They didn't, they wouldn't, so the fans did it. The fans did a good job of it, and they didn't like it. And it's no coincidence that Discovery, their new show that was coming out, they were planning about the same time, was going to be based on a Klingon war around the same era. And the difference is Prelude was doing it better. They were sticking to more to canon than... by doing it, I just realised this, by doing it as a fan film with no legalities, they could do a better job than Discovery could, because Discovery had a limited license through the Bad Robot negotiations for Secret Hideout for CBS, after all that backwards and forwards with licensing the films and then not doing a TV series and wanted to do a TV series and having to negotiate with them because they had a ban on it. They had no compete clause and all this stuff. And it's true. It's not just that they couldn't artistically or financially make something as good as Axanar. Obviously, they could. I just realised they couldn't do it legally. That's why they had to stop it. I'm just having this little epiphany right now while I'm talking, and of course it makes perfect sense now. Yeah, they had to stop it because they couldn't compete. And I just hope that now the example of how well it can be made, the popularity that people really will watch it. It's not a joke. People won't just go, "Oh, that looks like the old show. That's so camp and lame." People are going to watch it and love it. Hopefully, they'll actually do this now that they've got all the rights back under one company. I'm now thinking, wow, I hope they do this. But I'm going on another whole train from what this video was about. So all that happened. The fan film guidelines came out. Everything's pretty much ended. The shows that were already in production, New Voyages, and that were able to finish the episodes they had started production on, partly because I think they'd taken people's money and then they would be sued, and then they would sue for them stopping them. It was a big mess. They just let them finish what they'd started, but they couldn't do anything new. The one thing that is still in limbo was Richard Hatch was in an episode of, I think, New Voyages, and he died not long after the film, and the family wants his last performance to see the light of day. So they were allowed to finish the film, but they couldn't use any professionals, and they had to stick by all those rules with the rest of the production. So the people who were doing the effects had to walk out, and then they just had to get non-professionals to finish them off. Which is not that hard, actually it is hard, because some of the ones he started off in the fan films then got professional work. So, but they were so one person basically was working on like 800 shots or something crazy. So it's supposed to still come out eventually. It's just a matter of when they actually finish it, and it's just basically one person working on it. And so that's where all that was left. And people assumed that Axanar would not finish because they couldn't do the film as they designed it, as they planned it, as they promised it, and they also had no money because they spent all the money on legal fees apparently. And now the one thing that took Axanar down was the accusation that they had built a studio with the money and they were going to use that for profit later outside of making the fan films. Now their argument is, we didn't build a studio, we just hired a studio and kitted it out so we could basically use it, and presumably use it for other productions as well. But they were just paying rent on a space. They didn't own anything. No one would be paying them, I think, to use it. I don't know. That was sort of the accusation. I never got to the bottom of that with all the videos and stuff I watched. It was unclear whether they actually were going to use it to make money or whether that was just something that, of course, they made up to sue them, because they couldn't sue them because the real reasons that they were probably wanting to end the production. Now what's happened since then is they have gotten back into production, they've finished their set, they have gotten some money back together, they have worked out, they've scripted a 30-minute version of the film. Basically they can do in the two 15-minute sections, which is all that's allowed legally. And I've been watching a bit of their production and that, and watching what they've been doing, and I was a little bit confused because I'm like, just wait, you're not supposed to use professional actors, but you're saying that you're still going to use the actors who were in the first one. I'm like, have they gotten permission because they started with those actors, have already started work with them, and they're allowed to continue it? And it's just sort of like any new productions have to stick by the rules. If you're already in production, you get to sort of continue on and finish sort of within sort of certain, like where they're giving them some leeway, like to use the original actors and that, although Richard Hatch has now died and they have to get someone else to play that character or end the character. And the other thing was they were still selling merchandise and artwork and things. And I'm like, okay, if you're doing artwork from Axanar and Axanar is inspired by Star Trek, how can you sell that? Okay, you're not actually selling an image of one of their ships or their sets or something, but I was curious how they were doing that. And they're still doing their fundraising, and there were certain things that were agreed on, like they weren't allowed to fundraise publicly, they weren't allowed to use actors from the series, or professional actors or professional people, and they were showing production, working on production, and talking to people who, as far as I know, had worked on professional things. So I wasn't sure how they were doing this, and they got sent another breach notice just before, because they were about to start production this weekend and film the actual episodes, and they got the breach notices, and they say that they've actually received a few over the years, and they have negotiated backwards and forwards. There was one because they referred to Star Trek Axanar as an independent Star Trek fan film. They had to remove that and stop saying that because that's something you're not allowed to say, because they're not you have to categorize your film a certain way and refer to it a certain way to fit the guidelines. So they agreed to do that, and then a few other things that they were told they couldn't do, and they think they sort of negotiated. And then there were a few other things that they said they didn't agree to, like they couldn't refer to Aries Studios, but it's a separate studio. It's nothing to do with the Axanar production, so they should be able to. So they did stand on a few things and say, no, we're not going to do everything you want. We have some rights and we're going to stick to them. And they didn't get sued, so I guess they actually weren't out of line. But they've sent another notice. Apparently they have started filming. I've seen some videos on YouTube implying people are on set while they're filming, so they have gone ahead with filming. But I don't know. My first thought was, is he trying to sabotage the production by doing such obvious things that go against the guidelines, so then he doesn't make the film, so then he can keep the money and say, oh, I couldn't make the film because of CBS and I lost all the money on lawsuits. So, like, was he really just a con man, like they say, trying to just get money off the fans and not actually produce anything? Or is he actually, honestly, just trying to, use this space to make a film and just do it for the fans and just, because he is selling merchandise. They are continue to fundraise, which I don't think there's a problem with publicly fundraising. I think that's ridiculous. It should just be about profit. So long as that money just goes into making the film and it doesn't go into anything else, that's fine. The question is it going into other things? And selling merchandise, things like that, it does seem to be a bit on the nose. So I'm not on the inside, I don't know, but I find it kind of fascinating. Other people have gotten in trouble for putting up clips from Axanar and putting the copyright down as Axanar Productions or as Axanar, and CBS stood up and said, no, Star Trek, we are the only ones who own the copyright for that, not Axanar. So there have been a few little skirmishes and copyright claims that have happened along the way. And some people are saying, like Doomcock, that CBS is just scared because no one likes their Star Trek and people like this Star Trek better, that articles and things that they're putting out, official ones, are not getting as much attention as the fan productions and the YouTubers and stuff. And that seems to be true if you look at the numbers. So whether they would do all this just because they're scared, or whether they just are protecting themselves legally, or they're just pissed off because they've already gone through this with him and they pretty much made clear what he could and couldn't do. And he does seem... But they haven't sued him, they haven't actually shut him down, so maybe he's right, maybe he can sell things that he's created inspired by it, because they're not directly reproducing something from Star Trek. So maybe there's some leeway, but I don't know where it's going to go. It looks like they're filming. I hope they finish filming. I hope it happens. I want to see it. I do think it would be good. It's a pity that CBS can't just let Star Trek fans make films, so long as they don't profit from it directly, and any money they make go back into making future films, which you can do if you're making a series. You can just put whatever money you make or have left over into the next episode. But if you're only allowed to make one, you can't help but profit if you actually have any success. So it seems like they're sort of creating a problem themselves. I don't know. But I'm over 10 minutes. I just wanted to talk about this briefly, because I just heard it's happening. I've never dealt with the Axanar thing because it was so complicated. I didn't want to try and put it all in one video or do multiple videos about it and explain it. But I think anyone watching this knows about Axanar and knows what's been happening. So if you have any information, please let me know in the comments section. If you have any opinions, or if I'm wrong about anything, let me know. Feel free to like and subscribe, and hopefully the new Paramount CBS can work better with the fans and the fan films, because they do serve a purpose, and unless Paramount CBS is going to fill that void, I think they should let the fans do it, so long as they do it within respectable guidelines. And the other option is to fund them themselves and then actually be in charge of it and actually get money from it, and just let the fans produce it, give them some money, some budget, some help with advertising, and just make sure that the profits go to Paramount and the people. There are ways to do this that are better than suing fans and making us feel like we're having something taken away from us. So I really hope under the new management, Star Trek will actually negotiate something different with the fan films. But I'm going to leave it there because this could easily turn into 2 or 3 videos. But thanks for watching. See ya. Bye.